Welcome to Proof of PR, your passport to the world of public relations for teams building on-chain. I'm your host, Kelley Weaver, CEO of Melrose PR, a leading provider of crypto communications and PR strategy, and founder of BITWIRE, the modern newswire reimagined for today's comms professionals. Get ready for an inside look into the future of finance, technology, and entrepreneurship from those driving innovation in our space. Join us as we learn how they generate headlines, cut through the noise, and grow their brand awareness through media placements, press mentions, and thought leaderships. These are the stories behind their success. This is Proof of PR. Welcome back to Proof of PR. Today, I'm sitting down with Bisher Khudeira, COO and co-owner of Stormrake, one of Australia's largest independent digital asset brokerages. Stormrake recently launched here in the US, and so I'm excited to dive into what makes them unique. Bisher, welcome to Proof of PR.
Thank you for having me on. It's such a pleasure, Kelley. You're such a bright ray of sunshine. It's really freshened up my morning here and given me an excellent start to my day. So thank you for bringing me on.
It's a pleasure. And I think the audience should know that we're currently recording and it's just a normal 12:05 in the afternoon for me. And Bisher is tuning in at 4:00 in the morning his time. So this is true dedication to the mission here.
Not my first time dealing with US time zones. So I've been a broker for over 12 years now. And obviously America is the center of financial capital across the world. And so I've almost synced my sleep schedule to the American time zone because all the action happens in American trading hours. So that's okay.
Yeah, love that for us, not so much for you, but thank you again for joining. So let's talk about your journey. You have a background in FX trading, as you recently alluded to. How did you end up building one of Australia's biggest crypto brokerages?
Yeah, so I had the fortune of coming across foreign exchange back in 2012 as just a simple retail trader. I was working part-time and studying part-time and also trying to trade part-time. And one thing that I noticed very quickly was that I would work very hard, do my hours at the burger bar, and then deposit my funds into the brokerage account and then end up losing it very quickly. But my broker always was well-dressed, was suited, had a nice watch on, was driving a nice car. So I called my broker. At the time was a local Melbourne FX brokerage with about 3 employees at the time. And I said, why are you in such a good position and why am I depositing $800 a week only to lose it the next 24 hours? He goes, mate, I'll make money whether you buy or sell. And whereas I was trying to pick the direction all the time. So that's how I got introduced to financial markets when I was 20, 21 years old. After a couple of years of just being on the peripheries, I wanted to get in. I said, well, you know what? I've been trying to have a fair crack at trading as an outsider. Why don't I learn about trading from the desk being an insider? So I just, continued to apply at different brokerages across Australia. The same brokerage which I had learnt a lot about, trading, and I was contacting my broker on a regular basis. They were hiring, so they brought me into the business, and thankfully I really went to it like a duck to water. I was so fortunate because I just fell in love with everything to do with trading, brokering, spreads, understanding markets, understanding liquidity. And because we were a CFD broker, which stands for contracts for difference, we were trading multiple asset classes. So FX was the cornerstone of what majority of our volume was going through, but a lot of it also ended up in oil, in gold, in silver, in equity indices. And so I got to have a really broad cross-section of markets and asset classes during my FX and derivatives broking days. And in 2015, when I was out on the circuit trying to drum up some business for our FX business, there was a gentleman who came across me and he says, have you came across this BTC USD pair? I was like, BTC, who's it issued by? Where does it come from? And I initially dismissed it because I didn't know, much about it, as many folk did. But in 2016, about a year later, I continued to, peck at that kind of, what is this Bitcoin thing? Because, I kept hearing it in the conversations that my clients were having. So it was quite organic in terms of how I discovered it, because it was just something my clients continuously talked to me about and I wasn't informed on. So I said, let me learn about it. So at least I've got something to talk to them about it. And fortunately enough, I said, what, I'll just throw a couple of $1,000 in. I'm glad that I did, because I started to learn a little bit more about, the economics of Bitcoin, the history of Bitcoin, the what use case it has, what utility it has. And this was at a time when it was sub $1,000 and it was just more of a pipe dream than anything else. And then 3 years later, so fast forward from 2016 to 2019, I decided to make the leap from FX to crypto broking, which was quite a natural transition because instead of quoting Aussie USD or Euro USD, I was quoting BTC USD or BTC Euro, just with slightly different market mechanics. And then in 2019, I was working for another crypto broking shop, not my own, of course, but I learned a lot about the mechanics of the difference between Bitcoin, Ethereum, ICOs, capital raising, how DeFi works. So I had the real firsthand experience to understand how this entire market dynamic worked, and transitioned in 2022 to Stormrake. And one thing I learned from my FX and early crypto broking days working for someone else is that these markets are quite interoperable in the sense that whether you're plugging in FX or you're plugging in commodities or you're plugging in digital asset native tokens, these markets are quite similar, and nothing demonstrates that better than the recent success of Hyperliquid. And so 2022, when I came to Stormrake, I had this idea of a multi-asset brokerage underpinned by Bitcoin. And now, we're really facilitating that future from occurring, with whether it be licensing or opening up in the US. So bit of a journey, but a fun one nonetheless.
Sounds like a very organic journey, and your timing of interest into Bitcoin it parallels mine. Both of us entered around 2016, although I did discover it 2 years earlier and dismissed it because it felt too complicated. But I like that your journey also into digital assets started from a foundational understanding of Bitcoin. And you also mentioned that Bitcoin underpins Stormrake now. What do you mean by that?
Well, we've been in this market for close to 7 years as a business, and I've been an owner-operator for the last four and a half years. And one thing I've noticed from cycle to cycle, whether it was in my early days of 2016 or the ICO mania of late 2017, early 2018, and then the NFT mania of 2021, and then more recently, meme coin mania of 2024, they came and went, but what was the everlasting presence in people's portfolio was Bitcoin. And the thing that I look at for most of my investors is that whilst I don't necessarily dismiss the wider digital asset complex, because whether we talk about tokenized gold, and we've done a lot of volume in Pax Gold over the last 6 to 8 months, or we look at the NYSE adding tokenized stocks as a point of interest so that they can have 24/7 trading and instant settlement, I can't dismiss the digital asset complex as a whole. But what really drives this market, what really drives adoption, is Bitcoin and its underlying utility as a base money. And if we're distrusting of the Aussie dollar, of the euro, of the yen, of the US dollar because of rampant inflation, rampant currency debasement, lack of oversight, and effectively fiat currency is just, by its very Latin name, by decree, means that it has value just essentially by those who are at the top of the financial apex can decide what the interest rates are or how much currency is going to be printed. Bitcoin provides an excellent complement. And as more and more assets naturally move on chain because of the things that we just discussed, on-chain settlement, instant finality, those are great positives that a lot of the financial markets, traditional financial market operators, will come to love as well. We find that Bitcoin will be the base monetary network that makes the most sense in a digital world. So that's why we position most of our investors in Bitcoin, because without having to become too complicated or too intelligent, Michael Saylor's recent struggles with Stretch, Stripe, Strike, and Stride, and MSTR preferred stock, and the dilution at the ATM meant that whilst Bitcoin is sound at 21 million units and the monetary base and the protocol hasn't changed, all of the financial engineering on top of it added undue complexity and unnecessary risk into something that made a lot of sense without counterparties. And so that's why we position our investors in spot Bitcoin, unencumbered, unleveraged, because we feel that that is the best way to get exposure to this asset class without having to try to chase trends and try to chase gains that otherwise might not come at substantial risk of capital loss. So that's how we've kind of naturally ended up with Bitcoin as the base.
I love that. Well, we met at the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas, and I have my Bitcoin price clock here and
Love that. Love that.
Barbie Bitcoin sign. So we're very aligned. And I agree with the strategy, especially for people coming into digital assets. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. I think if you just explain Bitcoin, it's a good entry point. Shift gears back to Stormrake and your growth over the past few years. You've grown without the sort of typical crypto playbook of token launches, hype cycles, influencer marketing. What worked to build your reputation early on in Australia?
Just being consistent, showing up to the conferences, showing up to the podcast circuits, talking about our message about Bitcoin as a base money, being able to explain what it is at a time when there was a lot of confusion as to why should we even hold Bitcoin, explaining it to our traditional finance counterparts who were quite dismissive, but continuing to show up to the summits and the breakfast meetups and all that kind of stuff. So what I would attribute a lot of our early success was just the continuity and the consistency of just showing up and talking about Bitcoin, not changing our message, being really clear and articulate as to why we're even campaigning about this in the first place. Why are we building our business? And whilst the initial 2 years was a bit of a hard slog because we didn't do the usual hype cycle, mania, influencer run on why you should be trading with Stormrake, we found that we developed an initial client base of our first 1,000 clients who have, to this day, are our biggest advocates because we got them into Bitcoin at $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And, that message, whilst Bitcoin went from 10K, 15K, 20K to 126, now to 63, 62,000, we're still articulating the same message. So people who are pulling up my video files and my sound bites from 2022, they're the same from 2026 as they are in 2019. So that I would say a lot of our early success came from our consistency in showing up and not being flippant with our message, just being consistent with it.
Those early customers, why would someone come to Stormrake versus somewhere else to purchase Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, first of all, they were already digital asset curious. They were already Bitcoin curious. And whilst there were many platforms that could serve them, in America, it's Coinbase. In Australia, it's CoinSpot. Very similar self-service platforms that people can just jump into and help themselves. What they really appreciated is that once the deposit landed, they can pick up the phone and say, look, just very quickly, I'm about to make a $20,000 purchase on an asset that I honestly don't know a lot about. I've got a few questions for you. And then just answering those questions, being able to spar it out with them, saying, okay, let's do at least half at market. Let's do another half on the limit order. If you're keen on topping up, let's do a regular DCA. They just felt a little bit more comfortable with knowing that whilst they're coming into a new asset class, they can have that handheld experience. And a lot of investors, when they're coming into a new asset class, whether it's real estate and they're buying their first piece of real estate, they usually go through an agent or a broker. When they're buying stocks for the first time, usually they're going through a platform, self-service or phone call. So it's not all that uncommon when people are dealing in a new asset class or making a significant purchase for the first time that requires, substantial financial capital and a commitment to an asset that is still relatively new to your portfolio. Having that ability to pick up the phone and say, can we have a chat? And we're saying, yes, absolutely, really allowed us to cement what our service is about, which is taking people from 0 to 1, and then that 1 to 100, whether it be continued accumulation of Bitcoin, moving into self-custody, learning about collaborative multi-sig custody so that they have legacy, estate, and succession planning, was a very natural journey based off however much capital they were investing.
I love that because you're saving those of us who become sort of tech support for life for Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's right. So good.
Because it's so true. And I loved how you explained it in relation to purchasing real estate. You have a broker, you have someone who, walks you through that transaction. And this is not dissimilar. And it is nice to have someone who's willing to take the time to explain it to you and kind of walk you through the journey in terms of best practices, because maybe if they only own a small amount of Bitcoin in the beginning, self-custody may not make sense. But then when you cross that threshold, then it does make sense. And then when you cross that next threshold, then multi-sig. So walking them through that journey, I think that's really a great service.
Thank you. And that's what we're wanting to achieve which we have already done in Australia. So we've serviced, thankfully, 10,000 Australians and New Zealanders over our last 5 years. 2.7 billion AUD placed into Bitcoin. Converted into American dollars, it's about $1.92 billion placed into USD, placed into Bitcoin over the last 4 or 5 years, which is great. And we've done that through simple education, a simple message. And now we just want to replicate that success in America, which we know there's still a long way to go. Whilst the target addressable market in Australia compared to America is 13 times greater, and in Australia, it's about 1 in 10 Australians holding Bitcoin, whereas in America, it's about 1 in 5. So it's a much more prevalent asset class there. So whilst it may be a little bit more of a more mature market, we still feel that we can play a role in that continued adoption, picking up that extra 2, 3, 4, or 5 individuals that haven't quite yet crossed the Rubicon.
And what does the client relationship actually look like from the sort of first call through ongoing trading? Can you walk me through that?
Yeah, so the initial call is, first of all, how much capital are you looking to deploy? What entities are you looking to do that through? Whether it be a family trust, corporate entity, an individual basis, a joint account with your wife or spouse, and then road mapping that out to be a plan that we can implement for 1, 3, 4, and 5 years ahead. Because a lot of the times people come to us in different market cycles. They come to us during the middle of the bear market. They come to us during the recovery phase. They come to us during the build up and the breakout. They come to us at the zenith and the peak of the bull market. So we have to nurture people through all kinds of different cycles of this wonderful asset class and market cycles that we've come to know and love over the last 10 years. So what I really focus on with maturing our relationship with our clients is, okay, let's start by getting you off zero. So whatever that may be, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. Now let's understand what entities you're wanting to hold it in. Are you wanting to get your family involved? To what extent is your legacy planning around your Bitcoin? Because if it's a speculative punt and you're just putting 10, 20, 30K in there and your overall liquid net worth is north of $1 million, it's not something that you really have to kind of like plan out to the nth degree. But if it's becoming a 10, 15, 20% stake of your liquid net worth, you've now got $200,000 out of $1 million liquid net worth portfolio outside of your primary residence. Now we got to start thinking about, how does this asset move on to your legacy and estate and succession planning? Are you wanting to use a portion of your Bitcoin to travel and fund your lifestyle or whatever it may be? Let's have that conversation, because whilst we're not keen on getting down the rabbit hole of personal advice, and we're always quite cognizant of the fact to disclose that this isn't financial advice. We want people to understand what role Bitcoin plays in their portfolio, because if they're coming in for a number go up and then the number doesn't go up, then they're chopping and changing. The only one that really benefits from that kind of relationship of a investor in and investor out is the broker, because we collect fees on the purchase and we collect fees on the sale. What we want is investors who come in well informed. They know exactly what they're in for. So if I've got investors who come to me and say, I'm hitting a 2 and 3x and then I'm done, I'm out, that's perfectly fine. And then I've got people who are saying, this is going to my grandchildren. That's a completely different conversation. So, and that's something that we like playing a role in, because either we're playing a role that is going to be for many, many years to come, or just a single cycle until the next one comes around. So the typical investor relationship or communication, there isn't really a set template I can offer the audience, but really it's kind of like build your own adventure. So you start from zero, but then where do you go from there? It's up to what you want from this asset class, and we just make it easy to get ahead in.
I love that. And I love that you're helping people depending on what their goals are, and kind of meeting them where they're at with the education and advice. You have survived multiple market cycles. I mean, we're in a bear right now. Today we hit a new low. How has Stormrake weathered the down periods? I mean, you mentioned when you first got into FX trading that it was, obviously there's fees on buying and selling, but what have these bear markets taught you about building a resilient business?
Yeah, so we built out the business deliberately lean during the bull market. So whilst we were working incredibly hard, and some may describe it as understaffed and under-resourced, we naturally understood this cycle, right? Is not like these positive times where the sun was shining and the harvest was bountiful was not going to be a permanent fixture of the markets. And so we didn't overbuild or overcommit to payroll, to partnerships, to our budget, and got over our skis in a time when things where we in extrapolation is just such a dangerous thing in this marketplace. It happens in both bull and bear markets. I see it now with my investors, and to a lesser extent some of our legacy clients. They go, it's just going to get worse. If we keep up this trend, we're going to be at $10,000 by the end of the year. But on the inverse, when we were trading at north of 120,000, people were like, my goodness, mate, we hit 120K at the first Q4 of 2026, first week of Q4 2025, my apologies. We're going to be at 200K by the end of the year. So what we do is we temper our expectations, both to the upside and to the downside. So we're not chasing incredible highs. We're not chasing incredible lows, because we understand that currency printing, debasement of the purchasing power of people's currencies is going to be a permanent fixture. You've got the Americans sitting on, yourself sitting on $39.2 trillion of national debt. Us Aussies were sitting on $1 trillion of national debt, and our budget deficits are increasing, not decreasing. So our fundamental thesis hasn't changed. What we need to do is just make sure that we operate without extrapolation and without trying to get over our skis. And so what that means is that during the bull market, whilst we're working exceptionally hard to service our clients, because again, some may say we're understaffed and under-resourced, when the bear market hits, we're perfectly staffed, we're perfectly resourced, and then we've got all the capacity to be able to hit the next bull market with full energy. And it makes the trading floor, in which I'm looking out to right now, which is quite empty, full of energy and full of excitement, because there's no round of redundancies. There's no, headcount cuts that having to go through, and people come into a business, into an enterprise where they feel like their work is meaningful and their work is valued. So we take care of them. So, people who have been with us since 2023, 24, 25, 26 are now along with us for the rest of the journey. And that means that the employee buy-in, the average broker who comes in here and spends 8-10 hours on the trading floor, they're completely committed to the cause, because they're not having this, dark cloud hanging over their head in terms of, when am I going to be part of the next round of redundancies? Because it's not even a conversation we're having to entertain.
Most newswire platforms were built for a different era of PR. Mass distribution, bloated pricing, coverage that looks impressive but rarely delivers real visibility. BITWIRE was built to change that. We give modern PR teams direct access to curated Tier 1 publishers that actually reach your audience, from leading crypto and business outlets to global financial media. Instead of blasting your news everywhere, BITWIRE focuses on quality distribution that builds credibility, authority, and search visibility through real placements and permanent links. Every distribution includes guaranteed publication, so you know exactly where your story will appear with no uncertainty and no wasted spend. Our platform lets you create and distribute a press release in minutes through a clean, intuitive workflow designed by PR professionals who understand what's at stake every time you hit publish. With fast turnaround times, your announcement moves quickly from submission to live coverage, helping you stay ahead of fast-moving markets and news cycles. No confusing subscriptions, no unnecessary spend. Just transparent, a la carte pricing so you can choose exactly where your news appears and scale as you grow. And when you need support, our team delivers unparalleled customer service at every step, from submission through publication, ensuring your release runs smoothly and successfully. Because today, it's not about sending your news everywhere. It's about placing it where it matters. BITWIRE, your news amplified.
Well, that's impressive, and it's easier said than done. I mean, I think that these market cycle, having built a business through these bear markets, it is tough. It is tough.
Yeah,
but you're right, and it's also tough during a bull cycle not to want to expand to meet the demand. But I think that that's really sound advice. And obviously I've met your team and I know how excited everybody is to be there, and you have good energy around you, definitely. So I feel that just from my interactions. And so, yeah, kudos to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I mean, that's why we made a cognizant decision to actually expand into America when the market conditions weren't as strong, because we knew A, the attention and the competition wouldn't be as high, and B, we because we were, we didn't overdo it in the bull market, we've got so much resources now to expand in the bear market that we naturally believe that these market cycles will turn. Our anticipation is in Q4 2026 because average bear market durations are around 1 year and they hit around 60 to 70% average drawdowns in terms of major corrections. So if we hit that over the next 3 months, and then we've already established our presence in America, and let's say the market's between 45 and 55K BTC USD, and we've already established our office in Dallas, and we've got a couple of hundred clients there, then our runway is exceptional because we don't have to try to compete when everybody's eyes are on the prize. If everybody's eyes are on the SpaceX IPO and the AI complex, I can just do my little thing in the background, build my brokerage, expand into the Americas. Nobody even knows we've landed technically until this video goes out and goes viral. But but what really ends up happening is people aren't really anticipating somebody building during this period of time.
Mm-hmm.
We build, we expand, we land into America. We've already serviced 10,000 people here in Australia and New Zealand. Bang, it's easy money at that stage, or at least it should be on paper. We'll see in 2028.
Well, I love that you think that this is going to turn around soon because I'm ready. I'm ready.
Let's do it.
I want to talk more about, you spoke on stage at the Bitcoin conference alongside executives from BlackRock and Arch Lending. How did that come about? And what did that kind of visibility do for your brand?
It was great. I mean, first of all, shout out to Bitcoin Inc. and Bitcoin Magazine for holding the Bitcoin conference and for giving me an absolutely epic deal to sponsor it and to show up on stage. So did pay a couple of American dollary dues to show up and be on stage, which was a privilege to be there. But what we did is that when we were talking with the event planner and the event organizer in terms of sharing what I've been comfortable discussing, they're like, you're institutional, you're corporate, you're enterprise. And I was like, is that the suit and tie talking, or is it what my actual experience denotes? But no, it was good. So we found ourselves with BlackRock and Arch Lending because for a lot of folk, a traditional brokering service isn't quite commonplace, but we saw a big presence from Robinhood, for example, and Nexo announcing their private and concierge business. So they've got, fantastic retail platforms that services the masses that just want to have a punt and just, have a crack on their applications and download from the App Store or Google Play Store, and then they're just trading away. But then they notice that, your premium, your VIP clients, your top tier capital allocators who are investing $100,000 or more in a single transaction, they need a premium or concierge service. Whereas we've come to that realization 6 years ago, and we built a premium desk from the beginning, and not having to try to co-opt a premium service towards just trying to have a retail application. We started premium, and then we lowered our transaction minimums over time from 50,000 to 10,000 to now 2,000. I don't think we're going to get much lower than that, but it makes it more accessible so that the first time investor who is Bitcoin curious might not want to be putting in six figures, but they wouldn't mind having a crack with $5,000, $10,000, but their overall liquid net worth might be in the millions. That's the kind of investor that we've been positioning for and taking care of for a very long period of time. And so being in front and being on stage, front and center with the likes of Arch and BlackRock just cemented us as that private concierge broker that people are expecting to deal with, and that they're not having to deal with a retail trading platform application. We are concierge and private by design and by first principles. We're not trying to co-opt it as a way to try to target the premium VIP market. That's our background, that's our expertise. And so that was really awesome. And shout out to Sam and shout out to Dhruv. These guys were epic. Like, they are such a font of knowledge, and just to be able to share the stage with them and share my opinion on where the markets were heading was a real privilege and opportunity for me, and really grew our brand presence immensely during that short 2-week period.
Well, for those who are tuning in audio only, Bisher is joining us in a coat and tie today. He looks very dapper. One of the questions I have along those lines too is founders in this space can underestimate how much their personal brand is tied to their company's brand. And you just talked about the impact of being on stage and building that trust with the audience and being alongside these incredible individuals. How intentional have you been about, using your own profile as a vehicle for Stormrake, and how has that paid off?
It's only a more recent journey, Kelley, and it's something that I'm still going through today. So in my early days of sales and trading, I only really believed in pick up the phone, start dialing, get in front of the clients. I completely dismissed PR, brand, and marketing as an exercise for people who had capital to burn and to just waste, right? And I regret holding those views because I had hired and brought on a wonderful marketing manager, and she convinced me of the immense value that PR and personal brand can do for our business. So up until early 2026, so just 6 months ago, I didn't have any of my own personal social media handles. Everything that I was doing was just being ran through the Stormrake corporate handles, right? Whether it was on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn, because I personally didn't want to be in the spotlight. I said, if people want to find me, they've got my business, they've got my stormrake.com, they can go there and they can book a consultation, book a chat. But I'm now learning this fantastic world of Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter and or X and understanding reach. And she's like, it's not about the likes and comments, it's about your shares and your saves. That's really what we want. And it's just like learning about that personal brand has been a really awesome journey, because for the first time in nearly 5-6 years, I've been truly challenged to put myself out there. And I'm not shy of a camera, I'm not shy of getting on the microphone, but having to come up and share my ideology and stand behind what I'm saying, not on somebody else's platform, because I've been able to do that for the last 5-6 years, but to do it on my own. I can't encourage enough investors or entrepreneurs and founders that you should be backing in your personal brand, because once I took that leap from going, okay, I'm going to get outside of the old corporate veneer, and I'm going to get outside of the corporate curtains, and I'm going to go out there and be on my own, and I'm going to represent Bisher, and Bisher will represent Stormrake by extension. It was one of the best things I did over the last 6 months, because it's brought me in, not only, 30 plus clients over the last 6 months, it's also allowed me to combat some of the misinformation and combat some of the misnomers that occurs in our space, which is quite common with a relatively new asset class. So for anybody who's listening, if you're a founder, you're an entrepreneur, get behind your personal brand and preferably work with somebody like Kelley, who is an expert in branding, and get yourself out there, because it's a fun journey to go through, and nobody's going to really buy your product or invest in your company unless they know what you're about. So that's been an awesome journey for myself personally.
I think it's human nature at a foundational level. Like, humans want to trust other humans. And so that's why the founder-led marketing really is strong. But you had built that trust in other ways outside of being on the camera. But I'm really happy to hear that the past 6 months has been a positive journey, and that putting yourself out there and being able to be a great spokesperson for the brand has only benefited the brand from there. So excited to see how this journey of leaning into the personal brand and what it can do, especially as you launch here in the US. Excited to see where that journey leads you.
Absolutely. And any feedbacks and tips along the way would be greatly appreciated, because I haven't got it all figured out. I'll tell you that much.
Well, a lot of it's trial and error, but yes, I recently joined as a Stormrake affiliate partner, which I'm really happy about, excited about. And for someone hearing about Stormrake for the first time, how would you boil it down? Like, what should they know about what they're actually signing up for?
Just a genuine private client experience. So something that was usually reserved for high net worth individuals, family offices, and institutions, you too can experience what a private wealth manager and a private client experience is actually like, with as little as $2,000 being invested per transaction, because that's our floor. And so I think it's a really exciting time for the American investor to give themselves a crack, back themselves in, use a brokering service, use the brokerage service that your father or your mother may have used back in the day with their Wall Street broker, and understand that this asset class, whilst it's technology first and it's platform led, that it doesn't have to be sans a relationship. It doesn't have to be without a private client experience. So for anybody who hasn't experienced it, I definitely encourage you to give it a crack. See if it's for you. Compare us to your average experience with Coinbase or whoever you're using in America. You deposit $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. And, in Australia, I always say compare the pair, right? If you're going to give us a red hot crack, let's see if we can give you one of two things: a better quality level of service, so that way you get taken care of as an investor. And two, do we walk away with more Bitcoin per purchase? And therefore, it's a rational, economical decision for you to come across. If I deliver on those two things, give you a better service and a better price, then it's a no-brainer to come across. So yeah, for the Americans who are listening at home, please give us a whirl and try out private client services for yourself if you haven't already.
I mean, I think it makes so much sense to have a service where, again, you can take them through the whole journey and really meet them where they're at in terms of education, and then walk them through that journey and educate along the way. Because the fear that I always have had with sending people places is, what next? And then what if they leave the funds on the platform, or, all of these other risks associated with that. And so having this concierge service that has existed in traditional finance for, a long time, and bringing it to this new asset class that people are curious about, but often scared of because, I don't understand, or, it's, and making it approachable and offering that white glove is fantastic. So really happy to have you here in the US. Welcome.
Thank you, Kelley. I'm looking forward to it. I'm getting shipped up to Dallas in 3 weeks' time. So I'll be stateside, and I can't wait because, first of all, you guys have got the World Cup going on. So I'm already up at, 4, 5 a.m. watching the Socceroos and my other favorite international football teams. So, but amongst other things, it's just such a vibrant market that is so welcoming and it's so dynamic. Whereas here in Australia, you have to be a little bit more understated in how you promote and sell your services. Whereas in America, there's understatement is not a thing. You have to be overstated so that you can make an impact. So I'm looking forward to that. It's been good. It's been a welcome change for me personally.
Well, and by the time this episode goes live, you'll be about a week shy of entering the US. So by the time you're listening, he'll probably be here. Okay, last question. Let's wrap up. Thank you so much, Bisher, by the way, for being here. This has been fantastic. What's next for Stormrake? Where do you want the brand to be in the next few years?
So what we want to be is the intersection of traditional finance and digital assets. So back here at home in Australia, we've applied for our Australian financial services license, which is quite exciting because that allows us to offer securities, fixed income, derivatives, a whole range of traditional asset classes that were otherwise not available to us before. We just had to stay in our digital asset and Bitcoin niche, and then landing in America and distributing our services in the US to be comparable to, if not exceeding, the success that we've had here in Australia. So the only thing I really want in the next 2 years is to be known as the best broker in Australia and America, and sitting at the intersection of both TradFi and digital assets, where you can give me a ring and say, put me down for 50K of NVIDIA, 50K of BTC, 10K of ETH, and 20K of Micron. That would be epic, because for me, it's like you've got the entire risk complex being able to be managed. And then if we add on top of that fixed income and derivatives, we can hedge your risks, and we can also be able to bring in some of that yield that a lot of people are starving for as well. So yeah, that's my big bet over the next few years, is that America is going to be a big part of our success story, and that traditional market licensing will allow us to bring our expertise from digital assets into TradFi. That should be enough. I think that's a pretty big plate.
I'm excited for you. I can't wait to see where it goes. Everyone, check out Stormrake. We'll add the links in the show notes. And thanks again, Bisher, for being a great guest today.
Thanks for having me on, Kelley. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Proof of PR. This episode was brought to you by BITWIRE.com, the modern newswire reimagined for today's comms professionals. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen today. To stay up to date on upcoming guests and news, visit proofofpr.com or follow us on Twitter at Proof of PR. Until next time, keep learning, innovating, and hodling.